Donc, la dernière session de la journée, c'est...
This is the last session of the day. Access to markets and growth of revenues for small farmers. 50% of producers are subsistence farmers, and 40% have limited access to resources. Only 10% of farmers are considered as investors on a commercial level, with 80% of the farmers in the world without access or with only limited access to markets. The development of value chains has become critical for agricultural growth and for sustainable development. In the development of value change, economic productivity and profitability are fundamental. Only with effective measures throughout the value chain can agriculture develop in order to respond to global needs and to create work opportunities and growing revenue in the rural world. In this context, so that an innovation can have a large-scale impact, it has to follow a business model that is technically viable and economically viable. The challenge is also to integrate small farmers with limited or no access to markets into this business model, and this integration has to be beneficial to them. In this session, there will be 3 presentations that illustrate business models that were pilot project and distributed for food security and for nutrition of 900 people in Africa and Asia. This innovative business model has increased the use of probiotic products in 3 African countries, with bananas in Nigeria, and I would like to
read from Western University of Ontario to present CIFSRF project Fermented Food for Life. Gregor.
Thank you very much, Marwan. I'm going to just stand here. So once we get the slides up, I have 2 pointers, and I could do it that way, but I'm just going to use the pointer on this one, so sorry about that. In the poorest parts of the world, how do you empower people to use their local resources in a manner that provides health and economic benefits for all? This is a sachet, 1 gram of 2 types of bacteria. One of them is a probiotic. It costs 60 cents. It makes 100 liters of probiotic yogurt. And just so you know, fermented food is not probiotic. You have to have a probiotic bacteria, and in this sachet there's a probiotic organism that's had over 160 peer-reviewed publications. But a sachet on its own is not enough. And so you have to have a pro-poor business model, and that's what we created. And then they have a value chain, and the value chain includes the producers, the people who collect the milk, and you're going to hear from Winnie tomorrow, who has a wonderful story about how this has impacted her. You then have to provide employment, as we did, and income for farmers, milk distributors, yogurt producers, people selling and packaging and making labels. And you end up creating a licensed health-promoting product, in this case yogurt, but in fact we've done it with juice and with cereal. Then you have supporting retailers, distributors, who also have increased profits from this. And then you've got market access, so it's reaching adults, children, and I should add at the end refugees, because we've now reached refugee camps in Uganda, and we plan to try and get to the north where there's 1 million refugees. And then lastly, you have the potential to scale this up. So here is the value chain that we have managed to reach. The scope of the impact, we have 139 production units in Uganda. We have 38 in Kenya. And just to show you about sustainability, since our project stopped, we've already added another 20 production units in Kenya. and we have 85 in Tanzania. The gender impact is 75% to 25% male. The health impact is reducing allergy, diarrhea, aflatoxins. Our organism can degrade aflatoxins, and malnutrition. The economic impact is property ownership is up, child schooling is up, healthcare access is up, and post-harvest losses are down. And when you want to look at profit, this is profit per litre. So if you make 100 litres, you can see that you're making much more profit than if you just make 20 litres. And net profit for selling a litre of probiotic yogurt is 3 times that than if they just sold milk on their own. So the lessons learned from this project: we are microbe-filled species in a microbial world. We really are, and we have to somehow find a way to propagate the beneficial microbes. The Fermented Food for Life program pro-poor business model provides opportunity and means and income by engaging women and youth as well as men. These women are actually helping men as well, which I think is great. It's driven by local people, not by guys like me from London, Ontario. That's the exciting part, and they need mentors. And the women then become mentors for the next generation. And they need consistent evidence-based messaging. No, probiotics does not cure AIDS. No, probiotics doesn't do this, this, and this. You have to have science behind it and the right messaging. And it's sustainable through seasons, and being able to make probiotic juice. Then you have the mango season, you have the orange season, and we're going to look at different fruits to have it all through the year, as well as millet. It embellishes empowerment, ownership, health, and independence, which we're very proud of. And lastly, the program is transferable across nations, and my hope is that Canada can take up this opportunity to expand the initiative. Thank you very much from everyone who did the project.
Thank you very much, Gregor. Our second presenter, Dr. Clement Adeboye from Ocean State University in Nigeria. Clement will be presenting CIFSRF project fertilizer microdosing in West Africa. Clement.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be presenting this report of our project on market access and farmers' income on the MicroVec project on behalf of the Ocean State University, Nigeria, the University of Parakou, Benin Republic, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ife, Nigeria, the University of Saskatchewan, Canada here, and the University of Manitoba, funded by International Development Research Center and the Global Affairs Canada. We thank you most sincerely. Yeah. Our project runs on 5 perspectives. And the perspectives are, there's lack of organized research on indigenous vegetables value chain, therefore leading to neglect of these crops in the area of policy by people that are concerned with research and development. The second one is the lack of basic technical skills on production and value addition. Third is poor soil fertility and very limited fertilizer use, resulting in low productivity. The fourth is poor and unorganized marketing structure because of lack of awareness. The last is unexploited income generation potentials of fresh and processed leaf vegetables. I'll be talking on the fourth one, which is on poor and organized marketing structure because of lack of awareness. Yes, we have existing information on value chain of vegetables, which was carried over from previous projects that ran between 2011 and 2014, also funded by Global Affairs Canada and IDRC. And in this project, we succeeded in initiating a kind of negotiation with microfinance banks to obtain loans for farmers at very low interest rate of 3.6%, as against 90% that was obtainable at the normal bank rate. We also promoted consumption of vegetables by running daily radio advertisements, reaching so many millions. We developed innovative sales counter, distributed to marketers, which made them different, and promoted marketing of these vegetables at the local level. We are also on WhatsApp Facebook platforms linking farmers to markets, and also we utilized the internet system, the internet that made this thing available to the elite group in the urban settings. And what are the lessons learned? The results. Key results are average land area devoted to indigenous vegetable production doubled in Benin and tripled in Nigeria. Average fresh leaf yield per unit area land doubled in both countries. 1 hectare of land cultivated to indigenous vegetable generated an average of $7,500 per year. And also we integrated 181 schools where we trained about 1,000 teachers and over 82,000 students in the technologies of production of indigenous vegetables. And what are our lessons? The lessons include 1, negotiations held with microfinance banks really promoted our project because we succeeded in working on the side of the farmers instead of working on the side of the banks that will make profit. So what we did was to negotiate with the banks to lower their interest rates for the farmers and also not subject the loan repayment to existing interest rates as at the time of paying back. Today now, the interest rate in Nigeria is 33%. It was 90% when we negotiated, but we got 7.6% for the farmers, and they will repay at that rate. And the last one is to build capacity of students in vegetable production so that they become vehicles to promote agricultural youth entrepreneurship. But it's important to inform you that as we reported during the last reporting period that we submitted to IDRC, that we are already at the point of getting a contract with government to assure and ensure export of vegetables to global market. We have succeeded in doing so. Nigeria and Benin Republic vegetables are now exported to Europe, and that's another form of market access, generating revenue for the governments of Nigeria and Benin Republic. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks to IDRC, and thanks to Global Affairs Canada once again, and to partnering institutions. Thank you for working together to achieve this kind of success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Clement. Our third presenter, Mr. Kartikeyan Munyapan, from Development of Humane Action, Dan Foundation. Munyapan will be presenting CIFSRF project Small Millet in India.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to share our experience of developing regional value chains for improving production and consumption of small millets in India on behalf of the project partners, Dan Foundation, McGill University, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, and more than 400 value chain actors who collaborated with us in this project.
Apologies. Micro. It's on. So apologies for this technical problem. Let's make use of this time and ask for any.
Can I?
It's okay. It's there.
It happens. So again, coming back to our work on developing regional value chains of small millets, the context. No, how it works. Yes. So the context in India where we are working, we are facing an increasing burden of malnutrition, triple burden of malnutrition, and non-communicable diseases like diabetes. So India is becoming a world capital of diabetes. And in this situation, bringing back small millets in the farms and in the diets is a potential solution, given their richness in terms of macronutrients like protein, micronutrients, glycemic index, low glycemic index, high dietary fiber, and also other health benefits. But the production and consumption of small millets has declined drastically in the last 3 decades. Like the area under small millets declined by more than 54% in the last 3 decades. The major reasons are drudgery in processing, particularly for women, as you can see in the picture, and inadequate awareness of the health benefits of small millets, so low demand, and policy neglect when compared to rice and wheat, which are distributed almost freely in India through public food programs. So this being the context, so we started working on this project and in 2 phases of addressing these issues. In the phase 1, we try to find solutions for the critical issues in the supply side and demand side of the small millet value chain. And in the second phase, we have chosen 2 innovations. One, the appropriate scale processing machinery, and appealing small millet food products for scaling up across India through developing the value chain. And how we did it, so we started with addressing the supply chain constraints by supporting the farmers producer organizations for organized production and supply. And we supported the value chain actors through on-site incubation support, particularly for the equipment manufacturers and also for the food enterprises. Third, we started building the capacity of the end users of these technologies, processors, and mainly consumers. And whatever the experience we have gained, we have shared with the policymakers and the other stakeholders for wider replication. So what are the results? The first thing is transformation of the small millet value chain in South India. So the value chain used to look like this, with fewer actors and more than 80% of the produce from southern India moving to central India, traveling 2,000 kilometers, thereby crowding out local consumption in the region. So with interventions by the project and by various other actors, including the state governments, many new actors have entered the value chain, like farmers producer companies, village level processors, regional level processors, food enterprises, and even consumer organizations like women federations, playing a role of mediating between the producers and the consumers, leading to more processing and more consumption within the region. As a result, so there has been a considerable reduction in women's drudgery. For hulling matter of 8 to 10 kgs, they could reduce 2 hours of their time and the physical work involved in it, and increase in market access to farmers, majority of them being, again, women farmers, additional income and employment for food processors and food enterprises. So, for instance, 60 new food processors realized an annual income in the range of $1,870 to $4,489, and 55 food enterprises realized an annual income in the range of $673 to $935 Canadian dollars per annum. So, and all that has led to increase in consumption of small millets. And our project itself could reach to around 566,000 consumers in 10 states in 54 districts. So what are the key learnings? For mainstreaming neglected and underutilized species like small millets, it is not just market access, it is creation of market through developing regional value chains is needed. And for those value chains to be scalable and sustainable, establishing business models, viable business models is needed. And the on-site incubation approach helps in creating these viable business models. And the interesting part is policymakers do respond on seeing the evidences from our project and also from various other important millet initiatives in India. Recently, the Indian government has announced the year 2018 as the National Year of Millets, and they are rolling out Millet Mission. And the government of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha have already initiated millet revival programs, and we are implementing one of them. And there's a lot of scope for sharing and scaling up this learning, particularly on millets and related neglected and underutilized species to other parts of India, central and northern India, and to other millet-growing Asian and African countries. I thank IDRC and Global Affairs Canada for supporting this and offering this opportunity to share our learnings. And I thank all of you for patient listening.
Thank you very much, Munyapa. I would like now to invite our external panelists to share with us their reflections. We will start with Ms. Anne Mbabu from AGRA, Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. Anne.
Thank you very much. I have enjoyed the presentations, and I feel what they have brought out are all the key issues that we need in order to take these innovations to market. I look at what the innovations are in summary. For the indigenous vegetables, I see the use of microdosing of fertilizer and to increase productivity, and obviously that reduces the cost per unit. However, we have heard about fertilizer use. Fertilizer use has always been for cash crops, for wheat, for rice, for maize, never on indigenous vegetables. So this is a new innovation, and this is something that brings also not only the productivity, but also nutrition. Small millets in India, equipment to dehull and to reduce the drudgery. Again, this helps to bring up all the benefits and reduce the drudgery and for processing the products. When we come to fermented food products, the freeze-dried bacteria that comes out as an innovation and also helps farmers and users in the villages where there is no refrigeration to be able to produce this probiotic yogurt. But I still see some gaps. And the gaps come in how do you make these value chains competitive? We need to bring the business model and bring the business analytics into the innovations that we are talking about. What are the margins? Who is capturing what margin in the value chain? Because these margins got to be fair for all the value chain actors to remain engaged. What are the market failures? What are the risks? And how do we improve the competitiveness of the products that we are producing to be able to reach a bigger audience? Again, we were told about the nutritional value, the benefits of that, creating awareness to a wider audience. Who is our consumer? Because what I hear now is the product was targeted to a niche market. But if we are to go to scale, you need to increase and expand your market base. When I read some of the papers, I heard about the same product in Kenya. I come from Kenya, but I never heard about this probiotic yogurt, probably because the target market was different. Finally, I look at partnerships. We need to crowd in more partners around the innovation, the private sector, the financiers, the government, and other institutions. Some partners will come with technical support or capacity building to the farmers, others technical assistance to the financiers to come up with products that are applicable to the value chains that we are working in. We all know about investors. The investors want predictable policies. They don't want to wake up and they are told you cannot export, you cannot cross the border, the VAT or the VAT or taxes have gone up on your product. That kind of unpredictability does not encourage investment. So we need to bring evidence-based policy notes to the policymakers to be able to advocate for the issues that matter for these value chains. And for sustainability beyond research, public-private partnerships, we need the governments. The public really is the government here, but we need water, we need infrastructure, roads, energy. This we need to be able to advocate for so that the value chains can grow and expand to bigger and better, more markets. However, how do we ensure that there is inclusivity? How do we make sure that women and youth are not shunted off once these value chains become very productive? We need to make a deliberate effort to make sure that we engage everyone in the value chain. And when I read about the work that has been done on these 3 projects, they almost reached 1 million people. Imagine taking this to scale to reach millions of people in different countries. And the technologies are transferable. So I'm looking forward to be able to work with some of these organizations. Some of them is to leverage the staple foods that are being promoted in many countries. We look at maize, it's a political crop. But then when you add vegetables to that, then I think we are now then talking about nutrition. I thank you all, and I look forward to getting more insights into how we can make the markets work better for smallholder farmers and the value chains. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. Our second panelist, Ms. Gifty Blackpay from CARE International, Ghana. Gifty.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, panelists and Anne, for sharing your thoughts. My name is Gifty Blackpay. I am from CARE International in Ghana. And for the past 15 years that I've been with CARE, we have been working around sustainable livelihoods, improving women's empowerment, especially in the agricultural space. And I would like to share what we have observed and what are the implications for what we are doing. I think that is important. We're talking about innovations. We have talked this morning about 10 years of CIFSRF, and there are discussions about whether we need a second phase. And we need to be asking ourselves, at what point do we move and leave that for the market to take over? So we need to look at whether or not the innovations that we have are scalable. Can it achieve impact? Have we used market approaches? And are we sure that we can respond to questions as to whether have we identified a market? Does it make economic sense? And whether or not it is profitable. I think that largely when we look at the work that we do in development, we tend to focus sometimes only on the social impact and neglect economic impact. And so as we design, we may not look at whether or not we have identified the full range of actors that are necessary to ensure that at the end of an intervention, the market can take it and move ahead with it. So with working with agriculture, we've talked about millet, we've talked about vegetables. On Saturday, I was traveling from Benin to Ghana by road, and I think I may have seen some of the farmers that work with vegetables. I shop in a market in Accra. However, I buy from a woman who goes all the way to Togo and Benin to bring vegetables. It took us almost 7 hours, even in a private vehicle, to drive from Accra to Benin because of border stops and border issues. So we ask ourselves, vegetable has a short shelf life. How are we looking at opportunities that may exist beyond the region or beyond where the women are? So we need to look at a full range of it. Smallholders need a myriad of services. We are talking about input services. We are talking about financial services. We are talking about extension services. We are talking about business development services. We are talking also about market linkage and market information. So we probably need to look at the approach that we use. I was very happy to hear Anna talk about the fact that she's employed 300 people. For CARE and for the work we do, I think it's important that you need to recognize and identify the people like Anna who can easily link up with smallholders who probably live in far remote areas and look at whether or not we can develop an effective distribution channel so that we are linking effectively actors along the chain. We've also looked at situation where we are asking ourselves, do people receive or get adequate financial services? I listened to our colleague from Nigeria talk about the fact that in the process of negotiating, they negotiated on behalf of the farmers. And I asked myself a question, what ends? What happens when the project ends? Who negotiates on behalf of the farmers? And so I think that it's important that we build the skills of farmers and create that opportunity so that they can negotiate. We've done a lot of that kind of negotiation, trying to look at how can we ensure that businesses are not only interested in profits, but also they can calculate what we call social return on investment and look at whether or not, if we have to reduce interest rates, what does that imply for us? In Ghana, we are currently lower middle income. We have a president that's talking about Ghana beyond aid, and also the fact that a lot of development partners and donors are interested and excited about it. However, we want to ask ourselves, how are we preparing all of our countries and all of the work we do to become sustainable? So it is important that we allow market forces to operate. However, we ensure that there are partnerships that people can leverage on. In CARE, we are supporting the government to look at innovation around insurance, and so how inclusive is financial services and also insurance. So there are three things that I think I would like to end up with. What are the key actors in a market-based approach? Have we identified all of them? Are they all linked? What is the linkage? Is it effective? What kind of partnerships do we need? We need to ensure that we have addressed the different level of partnerships. And then lastly, in projects like this, how are we communicating the lessons and the results and the innovation? Are we sure that we can communicate it in a way that we say, yes, there's a strong business case, and market forces can take this over and let it run, ensuring that all different sectors are also involved and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gifty. And now we move to our last panelist, Dr. Nikita Eriksson Hammel from Global Affairs Canada. Nikita.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and thank you to all the presenters, and congratulations to the organizers for such a great event so far. I was busy taking down some notes, and I think I'd like to share about 3 or 4 observations from what I've heard and a few takeaways that I'd like to bring back to Global Affairs Canada into our work. The first is around novel foods and recognizing the 3 projects, and I think applicable to many other CIFSRF projects, push the boundaries on marketing of these new foods. Important to note the tremendous work they did on dietary change. And we know that in behavior change in international development is one of our hardest tasks, and I think changing behaviors in diets is probably even one of the more difficult tasks that we have. I've been working 8 years to change the diet of my son, and I'm failing miserably. But what I noticed with all these projects was they worked all the way through the value chain, right to the consumers, right to the women preparing the food at the household level. And I think that's very much a key to the success that we've seen in a lot of these projects, in creating a market really with the person who's really going to be touching and preparing that food at the household level. Another element that came out, and I think it's worth raising, is when you work on a project and you're working right at the consumer level, selling food on a daily basis, you're also creating a cash flow back down the chain from consumer to vendor, vendor to processor on a daily basis. And that's creating information that will allow you to assess the financial viability and financial sustainability of that business model very quickly. And I think that's an important observation to take away. Another takeaway is that these projects demonstrated that technological improvements, technological innovations are accessible to poor producers, to poor processors. And further contributing the evidence to what's probably already a weakening myth that high-tech innovation is not compatible with smallholder systems. And once you adopt high technology, it opens the opportunity for new financial instruments, new financial mechanisms, and that's a very exciting path to go down. My third point, kind of brief point, is looking at how business models identified the various actors and beneficiaries in their project. And I think all the marketing needs to work towards that segmentation of the beneficiaries to identify who your consumers are, so you can better target your foods to the consumers, but also identify niche opportunities for women in the value chain. My fourth point was really to ask the question about how will these projects look like once the project ends. A donor project provides a certain amount of stability to a lot of the inputs. The knowledge inputs, the technical advice, the training workshops, the seeds, the tools, the equipment. And so we've seen tremendous success. But when the project ends, and how stable are those inputs, especially in an era of uncertainty and shocks. And so the question that came to mind was around, is there sufficient finance to keep these other inputs sustained? And there was some projects looking at obviously making strong linkages with microfinance for the beneficiaries. But looking beyond that, and obviously it's beyond the scope of these research projects, but are the other value chain actors who are there to provide the seeds, the seed suppliers, the fertilizer suppliers, the business services, the veterinary services to provide sufficient clean milk into the system, are they being adequately supported with agricultural finance? So that was the other point that I thought is worth taking a look at. So just very quickly to reiterate, dietary change, really important, got to work through the value chain right to the consumers, right to the women at the household level. 2, high-tech innovations, high-tech products are compatible with smallholder agricultural systems. 3, market segmentation, really needed to actually target your food to consumers and also identify niche opportunities for women. And finally, is there sufficient agricultural finance in the sector? So beyond microcredit for beneficiaries, but are you providing that meso-level credit to the other actors who need to be stable in providing those inputs? And that way you will sustain the scaling up and sustained results that you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the presenters of the 3 CIFSRF projects and to our external panelists for sharing your reflections and the key findings of your projects. And now we move to the table discussion. As in the previous sections, please, we need to address 2 main questions. What is new and innovative? And what are the gaps and next steps for the future? So we have 20 minutes for the table discussion, please.